Towers being killed is one of TDX's main distinguishing features from every other Roblox tower defense game. However, I feel like the way it's currently being used could be better. Firstly, I'll explain what the main issue about it is. Instakills, or just high amounts of damage in general. If you've played the recently reworked Expert mode, Endless, or pretty much any event on TDX, then you know what I mean. Attacks that kill your towers without any way to counteract them. This is clearly an issue because you're essentially just forced to sit and watch as thousands of cash disappears in front of your eyes, knowing that there's nothing you could have possibly done to avoid it. Not only is this a bad thing for the player experience because of how annoying it is, but it also affects how the game is balanced. To know what I mean by that, I'll give you an example for this issue, that being XWM. The rebuilding mechanic is pretty OP because it essentially lets it bypass tower death. Before the nerf, you could essentially just spam it once you got a few maxed on some of the hard game modes we've had, like with the Halloween event and Expert. Because those modes were made with the idea that your towers will die, so they adjusted the eco to give you more cash to compensate. But with XWM bypassing that, it essentially lets you easily snowball to having a whole army of XWMs, because the ones that were supposed to be dead are still alive. Of course, this was fixed with the recent dynamic price scaling nerf, but this is just sidestepping the main issue of having tower death being inevitable. How would you fix it then, you might be asking? Firstly, let's understand what the purpose of tower death in TDX is in the first place. Tower death is supposed to keep you from being complacent and just sitting back and relaxing while your towers destroy whatever high HP boss you're trying to kill, like with other Roblox tower defense games. You're supposed to micromanage your towers to make sure that they don't die so that you'll be able to maintain your damage output until the boss dies by means of selling low HP towers, baiting to redirect attacks, or healing your towers. The current balancing makes it so all three of those are pretty much pointless because of how high the damage values are and how most attacks don't even indicate which towers they're attacking. Which means they pretty much die instantly, meaning most of the time you wouldn't even be able to sell them. Baiting attacks with cheap towers also doesn't work because most enemies that do near insta-kills usually go for the most expensive towers, which basically makes it pointless. Healing towers, and by that I mean just medic, is the only viable option to at least lower the chances of towers dying fast, because it can sometimes out-heal the damage being dealt. Shotgunner's heal is pretty much useless by the time you can afford its healing ability. So how could you fix this issue? The first step would be to nerf the tower's self-heal. If you're somehow unaware, towers heal passively after not being damaged for a while. You might think this is a good thing, but towers healing back to full HP decently fast makes it so that the enemy attacks have to deal tons of damage from a balancing perspective, because otherwise it wouldn't really do much because towers would be able to passively heal back weak attacks, like what happens with X-Soldiers. John said in his video about the Expert rework that its purpose in the early waves was to apply pressure, but the damage it does heals back after like 2 waves, making it as if it never really did any damage in the first place. So step 1 would be to make passive heals take a long time to heal back up, so that losing health would actually be meaningful. Damage taken a couple waves previously could be stacked with the damage taken on later waves, so that even attacks from X-Soldiers could be deadly if you're not careful, which makes you actually strategize on your early game placements. The second step is reducing all existing enemy attacks or rethinking how they work to account for this balanced philosophy. Insta-kill attacks should be either nerfed so that they leave at least high-end towers on the verge of dying, or separated into multiple weak attacks on a single target, so that you can actually react and make a decision on what to do, like maybe selling it or using Medic's Uber to keep it alive. Of course, Medic's healing should also be nerfed, so that it heals way slower, so that it doesn't become OP and focus more on being something that helps with recovering HP in between waves instead of recovering HP between high damage attacks. Adding these changes would make TDX's tower death more of a tactical decision, because it would turn inevitable deaths to something that you could anticipate happening and make decisions according to the situation. Here are some example situations to better visualize what this is trying to achieve. Let's say it's a wave before a boss wave, and your towers are pretty low. You have medics, but they won't be able to heal the HP of all of your towers to max before the next wave starts. So you have to decide if you should sell all the low HP towers and replace them with new ones leading to less DPS but more consistent damage during the fight, or maybe you'd want to sell them right before they die, risking them just dying with no cash in return if you can't micro fast enough. The final step is to nerf the amount you get by selling, so that it's a much harder decision rather than just being the only choice when a tower is about to die. The mobster cashback should also be nerfed too. This would also be a good way to balance rebuilding towers because they can't be healed by medics, so they have a higher chance of dying and losing a rebuild, and shotgunner's instant heal would become more usable in the late game because out healing damage being taken wouldn't be the main purpose of healing towers anymore. Obviously, these changes will never happen unless John Roblox himself is somehow convinced by some random nobody making goofy videos on his game, and also because it would literally require changing the stats and attacks of pretty much every single boss in the game and redoing wave layouts for every mode, which is definitely not worth the time and manpower needed for something that wouldn't really have that much of an effect on TDX's player count. Not to mention the unforeseen balancing issues that it could cause. But if anyone on the team thinks this is a good direction to take TDX in, then it would make TDX feel less unfair and stop the constant abuse that Warship and Heli have to go through with every update. But before I end the video, how did we even get to this point? The answer to this is the source of almost every problem in this game, which is Endless Mode. While Eradicator Mark II from Expert Mode did kill towers quickly, Endless basically gave every single boss the ability to insta-kill, because you would get a lot of cash in between those bosses and healing towers weren't a thing yet. It wasn't really that big of an issue for Endless Mode because it's the mode that lets you have ridiculous team comps and ridiculous amounts of towers that lasts a long time. But the problem was when every single future tower and mode was based off of Endless, leading to high HP and high damage scaling in modes that take way less time than it, which led to instakills being common and required to counter high HP and high DPS towers that were made to counter that very problem. Also, John himself has stated somewhere that balancing towers by their price was boring, so those expensive towers being easily killed is probably what took its place. To sum up all the yapping in this video, enemies shouldn't insta-kill, and towers should heal slower so that the damage taken is actually meaningful and so that you can actually make more strategical decisions while microwaving rather than just spamming expensive towers knowing that either the damage taken will just be healed instantly or they will just die instantly. I hope TDX's tower death becomes less spam replacing and be more calculated risk microwaving. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to support my channel. If you didn't like it, thanks for fully watching the video at least. That's all. Bye.